Welcome to Sober Sunrise, a podcast bringing you AA speaker meetings with stories of experience, strength, and hope from around the world. We bring you several new speakers weekly, so be sure to subscribe. We hope to always remain an ad-free podcast, so if you'd like to help us remain self-supporting, please visit our website at sober-sunrise.com. Whether you join us in the morning or at night, there's nothing better than a sober sunrise. We hope that you enjoy today's speaker.
Hi, I'm Bob. I'm an alcoholic. Sober through the grace of God and AA since the 10th of December, 1967, and for that I'm very grateful. It's really been a wonderful weekend. I think you get something out of these weekends that you don't get out of a regular roundup. I think you get something different out of the speakers, and everybody's been terrific. It's really, I know that Bob must have been disappointed when he couldn't get Ralph, but I think Ron did a good job. I think I'm sorry that I couldn't pass that out. And Mildred is one of my favorite. And it seems like I like what Cliff said last night about that each of us has a gift, and I've used that in my AA talk, and I think that that's so. And I think you see that as you listen to people talk. Everybody has a little something that they do. Mildred has always had a special place in my heart, and it's always hard. I find myself comparing myself to the other speakers, and I like it that you have Ivester last, so I don't have to compare myself. And I like that you put Sheldon in the lineup, which brought the average down. I think that I think it took some of the pressure off, which I appreciate the. And I like, Katie. I like we need younger energy. As we start, old guys are interesting to listen to, but you need all of it. And you can watch the people that come up to Katie and Charlie. It's, we need that younger energy as we go off with these things so that we can, kind of get a spectrum of it. I enjoyed Bill until he went over and went through the last 4 steps, which was part of the territory I was supposed to cover. And he kind of encapsulated my entire talk in about a paragraph. Should be good. I enjoyed Larry very much. And that thing on history that Gail does is really astounding. It is, when you get into the story, you just can't believe. I forget where I was, or someone was talking about the story when Bill went to make that telephone call to the Reverend Tunks, and then he ended up with Henrietta Seiberling. He made 10 telephone calls. Tunks gave him 10 names, and I don't think I have that backwards. I think he called Tunks first and then got the names and put 10 nickels in the phone and did that. That, I might have made it through 3 or 4, but I don't know if I would have made it through, 10. So it was really very special. Covered Sheldon, Larry. Those stories on the amends were very powerful and very good. And I'm looking forward to Thomas. If you're going to pick someone to compare yourself to, try not to pick Tom Ivester. That would be a bad deal for most of us. Cliff, when I think of, I've known Cliff a long time, and I think if I just pick one word that is love. It really is about love. And I think you did that and embodied it. And it was kind of an old-fashioned talk. It was really, it's amazing today the communication in AA has changed. All the talks when we first came in were closer to what we call drunkalogs today. And then I think Chuck Chamberlain, more than anybody else, altered the communication in Alcoholics Anonymous. He shifted it to include recovery and spirituality. But even in the talks of the first men and women that we've heard, they start with their first drink, end with their last. They take 5 minutes at the end of the talk to talk about the kids and job. it was included in the way they told their story. There was the power and dignity and change and transformation was so strongly implied and demonstrated in the story. Today it's more explicit, and then it might have been more implicit, but it was really, pretty cool. I'm supposed to talk about 10 and 11. Quickly tell you a little bit about myself. My story is kind of the opposite of Ronnie's. I was born on third base. I've been congratulating myself for hitting a triple. I was from an intact family, one of 7 kids, private school education, all that through. Drank my way out of the University of Notre Dame, middle of my senior year, started drinking alcoholically in my late teens. Couldn't shut it off. Great starter, poor finisher. Got kicked out or walked out of Notre Dame middle of my senior year. Finished school at home, left home, spent the last year drinking a quart a day and kind of at the bottom of the barrel, and woke up one day hugging a toilet. My underwear missed work, and it was the 3rd day in a row or something, and I looked at myself in the mirror, and that was my moment of truth, and I called Alcoholics Anonymous, and a couple of men came out and talked to me and changed my life. We have many traditions in Alcoholics Anonymous, maybe the most wonderful one of which is that we share our experience, strength, and hope, not our ideology, not our philosophy, not our thinking. And there's a power when you share your life with another person that Cliff talked about last night. And those 2 men in the share, I had talked to all sorts of helpers, but never to another person who had a drinking problem. And they gained my confidence in a relatively short period of time. And I went to my first meeting of AA, where I met my sponsor that I still have today, who is 91 years old and 56 years sober and still active. And he was the 12-step champion of the Uptown group of Alcoholics Anonymous. And he sat me down in a chair and told me that alcoholism was a disease that affected me physically, mentally, and spiritually. And that what my job in Alcoholics Anonymous was to do was to use the 12 steps to change, to find a different way to live. And if I didn't change, I wouldn't stay. He told me that I would diagnose myself over the next couple of months as I sat in the meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, which is what happened to me. And then he walked the path with me, and I got to go on all those 12-step calls, not as many as Cliff, but I went on an awful lot of them, and they were some of the best experiences that I've had in my life. I have loved AA since the moment I came in the front door. That was my gift. It's been hard for me to do the work, but easy for me to stay. And I've worked with a lot of other people who it's been the opposite. They were not attracted to Alcoholics Anonymous. They for whatever reason, didn't identify. They looked for the differences rather than the similarities. Cliff talked about having a wall. I built a wall up around me. The thinking that goes on behind the wall says, you like me, but you only like what I let you see about me. If you could see everything about me, you'd hate me. I hate me. That sort of thing. I started to tear that wall down when I called AA, continued it in conversation with my sponsor, completed it when I took my 5th step, and I made a discovery, and the discovery was that I'm not unique. My personality may be unique, but not my illness, not my behavior, not my feelings. And I started to have a sense of hope that what worked for you could work for me. When I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, what I expected to find was an expert on Bob. I wanted someone who was so wise that they could see through me into why my life didn't work. I was the guy who was seemingly pretty well equipped to live life and was unable to live it. It was like this. It was as baffling to me as it was my family. And I never found that person. What happened to me is I surrendered, and I became an alcoholic, and I had hundreds of people who were experts on recovery from alcoholism. Now later, in my recovery, I built the damn wall back up. Thank you very much for helping my drinking problem, but stay out of my sex life. Stay out of my marriage, stay out of my gambling, stay out of my work. Brick by brick, I built the damn wall back up until I was sober 7 or 8 years and somewhat isolated, going to a lot of meetings. And I got unsurrendered. I was on a honeymoon for about 9 months. That surrender experience creates an opening and grace that is almost unparalleled. You just, For 9 months, every time I asked a question, I got an answer. After 9 months, you could give me an answer, and I was not always sure you were correct. My ego started to reassert itself, and I had the mixed experience. I had another spiritual experience, which I'll get into and talk to. At 8 years, I hit a wall, and I think we make astounding growth in Alcoholics Anonymous in our first 2 or 3 years, and then many of us tend to level out. We have reached some of the goals that big goals, like not wetting your pants and going to work and staying married. But it's kind of subtle. We seem to be able to do the extraordinary, and many of us have an unbelievable amount of difficulty doing the ordinary. We just, have trouble with marriage, we have trouble with checkbooks, we have trouble with insurance, we have trouble with children, we have trouble with life. You ask normal questions to alcoholics, and they're tough. Are you married? And there's this pause. It is. Do you have children? And there's this concerned look on their face. I mean, they don't know. Are you educated? Did you go to college? I mean, those are complex questions. We're not unwilling to answer them. We just don't know how much time you have, and. What happened to me at 8 years of sobriety was as important to me as anything that happened in my sobriety, and brought me to a second level, and I was able to start dealing with more the causes and conditions of my alcoholism, and I was unable to see that you just don't get it done in 2 years. You don't get it done in 3 years. You don't get it done in 5 years. I mean, I get a kick out of listening to the different speakers sometimes. It's like they stumbled around in AA, and then at 10 years or 12 years or 15 years, they found the truth. And, now they have the correct way. And I don't think that's not the description that I would use. I think the quote, stumbling around, they look backwards and they judge themselves in their childhood of sobriety. Who isn't stumbling around? We do get some old souls. Every once in a while you get someone that can give a talk at 1 year that someone else would have to wait 10 years to give. They just are able to see it. They did the work. They saw it, and they can describe it. Those are different gifts. There's a lot of people who do the work that can't describe it, but they've done it. And every once in a while you get one of those, and it works out fine. So at 8 years, I had this epiphany. After 8 years, I became the unmanageability of my life mostly left. I was a guy who had work problems and marital problems and children problems and gambling problems, and those left at that point in time. And then my work life took off like on a rocket ship. I started making lots of money for the next 5 or 6 years in my deeply shallow period. And big houses, 2 Mercedes, all the sorts of things. I thought God was blessing me for my recovery. I was the asshole in the $1,000 suit and the Mercedes coming to the meeting. How would you like me in your group? It was, there's an arrogance, there was a false humility and lack of success, and there was an arrogance in my success, and I didn't see it. I was blind to both those elements as I went through it. And then they had then I lost it all, which still seems unbelievable to me that you can lose it all. How the hell do you lose it all? And my father saw that. I'm the guy who's making a lot of money, all the sorts of demonstrations that you had, and my dad was always concerned. And I thought, you're just a depression guy. But he wasn't concerned about the depression. He was concerned about my shallowness. He was concerned about my love of success. He was concerned about how I spent money. He never went after me and was specifically critical. He didn't have to. He was such a fine man. I knew what he was concerned about, even though I pretended I didn't know what he was concerned about. And I'd always answer him in dollars. It's okay. I got it handled. Not. So I went through a collapse in the late 80s and early 90s. It was one of the worst periods of time I had. I thought about suicide. 20-some years, in 1990, would have been 23 years sober, sitting in a meeting, crying through the meetings, My kids in treatment, Linda and I, go to the sober house every Friday night. I cry my way all the way through the meeting. See that guy over there? He's got 25 years. How'd you like to have what he has? I think the lesson for me was to learn who I was with money and who I was without money. And then I went back to work. I was allowed, through God's grace, to keep the company. We lost most of the money, but then kept the company, and then we built it back up. And then the last couple of years, we tore it down. And I learned most of the lesson that I think the universe and God wanted me to learn in the collapse in the late 80s and early 90s. And then I forgot it. And somewhere during the great run-up of real estate values, I forgot it and got back in the, into the deeply shallow period, and I need to learn the lesson again. Old and dumb is such a crappy combination. If you can change one of the variables, I would encourage you to do so. So if you're willing to sit and listen to a guy in his late 60s, 40 pounds overweight, who's gone broke a couple of times, I will share my story with you. It is, but I'm an active member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I sponsor a bunch of guys. I go to a lot of meetings. I'm in love with my wife. I have 3 children that I have a good relationship with, and there's lots of other wonderful things that are going on in my life. And while I am in different financial circumstances than I historically have been, I am still self-supporting through my own contribution. So there's the both sides. 10th step, continue to take personal inventory. When we're wrong, promptly admitted it. The short version is I don't do a formal 10th step. I don't know what. That's just the bottom line. I have done it over a few periods of time, but I don't do it. I do it I do it throughout my day. It is a step that has become part of my life. I think there are people that would say, oh, baloney, that's a rationalization. That is not my experience of it. I bring that. I think the steps are both something that we do, but eventually they become something that we are. They become literally part of the fabric of our thinking and character. And I bring that to my daily life. And when I have a conflict, I examine it and do the things that the book talks about in the 10th step, and I quiet myself down, talk to another person, all the sorts of things that I'm supposed to do. I think one of the great enigmas of Alcoholics Anonymous and recovery or any spiritual walk is if it works, why do I still have problems? I think that is the enigma that Bill Wilson faced. I think that's what he talked about when he talked about an emotional sobriety. And I think that's the little boogeyman that lurks in the backs of most of us. And I want to talk about that a little bit. Why, if it works? Why, because the message that we're given to the newcomer, that was my dilemma early in sobriety. Come in here, get in the book, get a sponsor. You don't have to do it perfectly, just do it well, and you're going to be fine. And then you get in your car and you drive home and you say, when are you going to be fine? You're 10 years sober and you're not fine. When the hell is this, going to be okay? And we don't have that conversation very loudly in Alcoholics Anonymous because it sounds like it's kind of a disloyal conversation. Our lives are extraordinarily better in most ways. But the fact is you get us on most days, it's not enough. I don't give a damn how grateful I am. It's not okay. And I want a better marriage. I want a better relationship with my children. I want more balance. I want something. It's not okay. And I've been trying to get it for a while. I don't seem to be getting it. Is my life better? You bet it's better. Am I grateful? Oh, hell yes, I'm grateful. Would you like to freeze your life right here for the rest of your life? No. No, I don't want to freeze it. I want more. And not more like selfish, not more like greedy, more like I want to continue to grow and change. What's in our way and why the hell doesn't that happen, which I think has been one of the central questions in my life. First of all, I want you to know that at your core, you're conflicted. Only part of you wants to get better. Only part of you wants to change. The problems that have persisted in our lives over a long period of time, we think they're problems, right? They're filed under answer in our hard drive. I promise you they are. We come in here, we've got a toolkit, it's entirely full of hammers. There are no screwdrivers, there's not a saw, there's not a wrench, and we have learned to adapt. We use the claw, the screwdriver to unscrew things, or the claw, the hammer. We use little hammer and big hammer to turn nuts. We have adapted. We go to workshops on how to use hammers, and it's just, it's almost hopeless. And we don't know that. We literally do not know it. And the causes and conditions of our alcoholism are somewhat invisible to us, and they're invisible to us because we don't want to change them. And then when we go to change them, we got the ego to deal with, and the ego just sits in the background and says, look, do whatever the hell you want to do. Go to the meetings, talk about it. Inventory. I like inventory. Inventory it, talk to the guys, but get this straight. We're not changing. I don't give a shit. You can talk about the steps. You can talk about the tradition. Love the concepts. We're not changing. So just have a good time. And so I'm working with a guy, 35 years old, married, second time with kids. He's having trouble with the columns in the 4-step. I'm saying, that's complicated. Don't worry about it. Just get your mom and your dad, brother, sister, get your ex-wife, your ex-boss, your present boss, a couple of neighbors, a couple of guys from the group, bring them over to the house, and here's what I want you to say to them. Just say, we have a step in Alcoholics Anonymous where we try to get in touch with our defects of character, and I'm having trouble identifying them, and I wondered if you'd help. Most of us would not call that meeting. Why? And I'm going to say we don't want to change. But it's worse than that. We don't want to know. We train everybody in our lives as to what they can talk to us about and what they can't talk to us about. We train our wives. We're not talking about that. You want to talk about that? It's going to be a tough conversation. We train our kids. We train our bosses. We train our coworkers. We train our friends in AA. We train our sponsors. Your sponsor knows bloody well what you're willing to have a serious conversation, what's a real piece of business, and what's a complaint. And whether you're up to it or not up to it. Both parties know. We're going to have a pretend conversation. Sometimes the sponsors, we get tired of it, and maybe we'll try to bridge that gap. But there's a lot of pretend conversations in Alcoholics Anonymous. There's a lot of sponsees that don't call their sponsors because they don't think they have any business. They don't know what to say. And I think that's normal. I keep saying, you don't have to say anything. Just check in. Tell me how your day is. I'm not looking for a 4-step every time you call me on the telephone. I want to develop a relationship. Just checking in. Day's okay. Doesn't have to be a deep conversation. The main condition in my relationship is that you pay attention to what I say. I've got to have some impact on you, or I won't enjoy the conversation. I do enough things poorly. I don't need one more thing that I do poorly. No, I'm serious. I get guys that ask me to sponsor them, and I'm sponsoring a lot of guys, and I don't need a bigger list. I'm saying, you got to help me. I do not play ping pong. You have not called me until you've called me 3 times. This is not a game of tag. If you aren't willing to do that, get another guy. But that will help me. If you're not willing to help me, I don't want to help. I'm not willing to, get in the game to go do that. Oh God, time's going. We are afraid of change. And what we think we are going to change is who we are at the essence of our being. We think our behavior, it's how I've always been. We are overly in love with our stories. The story is one of the most important things we have in Alcoholics Anonymous because it's our method of communication, because you can't show God. You can't reveal God in words. But you can kind of paint a picture about the power and the transformation and the result, and that's our story. But there's a negative part of our story. Many of us are locked up in our story, and our story is what ends up restricting us from the full measure of what is available in our recovery. because we think it really describes who we are. We think the ego describes who we are. The behavior we have is not skin and bones. It's simply what we do. You can change from a Chevrolet to a Ford. It doesn't change who you are. You can change your behavior, and it doesn't change who you are. And yet we are so identified with certain things that have been in our lives. That's the way I am. No, it's not. It's what you do. You don't even have a clue as to what you am. If you had an inkling into that, you would... Okay? Most of us have an idea of ourselves as bad people trying to get better, and it's a paradigm that is broken and doesn't work. I think if you talk to most of the old-timers in the rocking chairs on the veranda, they tell you that the job is not getting better. It is finding the good that has always been there. That Cliff Roach is the same guy today that he was 30 years, 40 years ago, and he simply removed the things that were in his way. And if we don't have the discipline and the tool of inventory, but what's in our way is we really have part of us at some level that does not want to deal with it and does not want it to be revealed because we think it's who we really are. It ain't who you are. It is what you do. It is behavior. It is easy to change, and when you open yourself up to the grace of God, most of the behavior just falls off. Resistance and muscle doesn't work. When you listen to the reading before the meeting when it talked about, I'm not even resisting it. The problem has been removed. That is what happens in transformation. That is what happens through the grace of God. Most of us don't want to take us to God in a complete way. We'll take the 70% we're willing to bring, but I'm not going to bring the porn collection. I'm not going to bring my gambling. I'm not going to bring my, there's just a few holdouts, that I'm doing that I don't want to bring. Why? Because they're your treasures is one of the answers. They are our treasures. And I will report to you from my own personal experience, they are dog turds wrapped in gold tinfoil. They are not treasures. I mean that. They look like, and the other reason we don't want to bring them to God is we don't like God. And most of us will not get into that. For most of us, if we keep the same conception or idea and belief in God that we brought into the program, it's hopeless. If that doesn't broaden, widen, become more personal, you cannot get there. It has to be, it ends up, most of us are lazy. We don't read spiritual material. We don't seek. The book says, could and would if he were sought. And in the relationship specifically about God and our relationship with God, there's been lots of my life where the seeking's been pretty damn skinny. Now, I think going to Alcoholics Anonymous, I think going to meetings, I think having a sponsor, I think doing 12-step work, all meet some of the requirements of seeking. But there is some work that we have to do in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous that is not communal. It is not in the fellowship. It is personal. It is us. It is private. It is what we have to do to attend to. Some of that's in our inventory. Some of that's in the 8th and 9th step. And a considerable amount of it, I think, is in the 10th and the 11th step, and especially in the 11th step. If we don't broaden our God, what was that guy that wrote the book, Is Your God Too Small? Our God is too small. And I think, in the last analysis, as an old guy, I can tell you, I think what you're going to find is that at the point that you and God intersect, that's the point that you want to arrive at. That we're made in the image and likeness of God. That what you're going to find at that meeting point is yourself. The process of finding God is a process of removal, not addition. We have dragged our perfect magnet through the junkyard of life and have showed up here with a 6-foot ball of crap that we drag into the meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, and it's who we think we are. And then we've got an internal conversation about that Cleveland wasn't supposed to talk about and talked about. And we identify with that internal communication, and we think it's who we are. We don't even realize that we're observing the conversation. That we may be the consciousness behind that conversation, not that conversation. But most of us are hypnotized. We really think that internal dialogue is us. It is not you. If I was going to start the meeting on meditation this morning and ask us all to meditate for 5 minutes, for those of you who haven't meditated, the very first thing you will discover is you can't quiet your mind, which is what you may think meditation is. And all of a sudden you're aware of this gerbil track of stuff that is going through your mind. And you think, if you ask most of us, we think we initiate and instigate and create our thinking. If you do, stop it. And what you discover is you can't stop it. It's just clouds in the sky. It is meaningless crap until the one comes through that's about you, that's got Velcro on it, and you catch it and engage it, and you think it's meaningful because you have now pasted it on your eyeball. And when it is on your eyeball, it's your reality. And it's not reality. It is a random piece of crap going through the pipe that you have taken and pasted over your eyeball. And when you start to gain some distance from that internal dialogue, instead of pasting it on your eyeball, you're going to be able to look at it here. And you're going to look at that and you say, oh, wow, I haven't had that one in a while. And it won't own you. And you can just let go of it and let the train go through the station. You don't have to get on every train that goes through the station. The process, it is the only way we are going to change and become more peaceful and to have more joy is to increase our consciousness, is to become more awake, having had a spiritual awakening. See it or be it. If you don't see it, you are it. As long as I could not see my alcoholism, I was an alcoholic. The seminal event of me changing, or of my being changed through the grace that happened to me when I walked into Alcoholics Anonymous, was seeing it. If you don't see it, you are it. And that is the process of, Chuck talks about discovering, uncovering, and discarding that we have in Alcoholics Anonymous. It is a difficult process. It takes courage to keep on growing. Many of us arrive at a point that seems acceptable and we stop growing and we defend ourselves with our sobriety. The very gift that we have gotten in the program is the thing that we start to use about why we don't have to give up the few turds that we have kept. We really do think we can pee in one side of the glass and drink out of the other. We honest to God, we should, we should give lessons. Would everybody raise their hand who's, got that as a core belief? I really do think that many of us, that has been a core belief that, that the few things we reserve don't affect the rest of our life. And I think that most of us are trying to change the things in our lives with muscle. And I'm going to go to Primm and I'm going to sit down. I'm going to listen to these guys talk, and I'm going to come away with some tips. I'm going to come away with a new energy. I'm going to come away with a new idea. And we're not missing any ideas, and we're not missing any information. It is what's difficult for you is what's difficult for all of us. It's a hell of a lot easier to do AA than it is to do life. It's easier to go to meetings. It's easier to sponsor people. It's easier to give talks. It's easier to do the steps in a casual way than it is to be married, to be a parent, to have a career. Doing it, taking it from the practice range to the golf course is a measure of our skill. And most of us can't take what we have in the practice range to the golf course. And there's a little bit of that same gap when you talk about the ideology that we talk about in meetings, and then when we get it out on the street and we start dealing with the child who just got thrown out of school or arrested or all those sorts of things. I used to have this story about why I would occasionally slap my children. And if you had my kid, he's been thrown out of school, he's just a pain in the ass, you can't do anything with him, and most of it was Linda's fault, but the little bit that I'm willing to, take ownership of, And I'm doing with my child what my father did with me, and that's another sort of circuit that I would get into. I'd become my old man, and the kid would become me. And yet I've got the responsibility. One day I realized that if my brother, I thought it was Peter. And I realized that if my brother were Peter's father, he wouldn't strike Peter. So I'm saying, where's the problem? The problem's with you, Tiger. If 2 or 3 or 4, if you could put 10 people that are going to parent Peter, only 1 or 2 of them are going to have the issue you're having. Why don't you take a look at you? When I took a look at my gambling, as opposed to a source of income, because I was a good backgammon player, all of a sudden I took a look at what it was costing me in terms of work and the dishonesty of looking for someone who didn't do it as well as I did it and taking advantage of them. And I took a look at what it really was. And when you see it, you walk away from it. And when I came in Alcoholics Anonymous, I stood naked in front of my alcoholism. It altered me. At 8 years, I stood naked in front of my life, and I was able to see the unmanageability of my life at that point in time, and I was able to let go of it. And pain was the touchstone of growth. Pain was what reduced my ego. It ground my ego down enough that all the concerns that I would normally bring up about the areas of my life that I was trying to change disappeared. And all of a sudden, it wasn't important that I hurt or I felt uncomfortable or it was difficult. It's time. Let's cut the crap and let's take a look at the real picture of what's going on here. Is that who you want to be? Is that what you want to do? Is that how you think, this honors your faith or this honors your program and this is where the man you want to be? No. Are you ready? Yeah. Let's go. And then it goes from complaint to business. And there's such a difference when it's a piece of business. The conversation is just entirely different. When you're both on the golf course and your teacher's got a club in his hand and you've got a club in your hand, that's a whole different conversation than you have with your buddies when there's a danger of something really happening in this process. So that big 6-foot ball of crap that we brought through the process of Alcoholics Anonymous, through meetings and through step work, piece by piece we start to pry crap off. And then occasionally we go in for a steam cleaning to get some of the rubble and dirt and junk that is off there. And then after a little bit, and ongoingly, you start to say, oh, there's a beautiful piece of glass. There's a gem. There's a piece of brass. I think that's pretty cool. There might be something interesting. And you keep going on that process, and what you discover as you continue to remove the things that are there is this art object. And it's beautiful. And the more you remove, the more beautiful it is. And after about 10 years, you find out it's a lamp, whatever the hell that is. A couple of years later, someone gives you a cord. Year after that, you get a plug. Sometime after that, you plug it in the wall. Sometime after that, you turn it on, you get a light bulb. And then you turn it on, and 3 years later, you find out it's a 3-way bulb. And that's something like the process that we are in. It's a process of removal. And what you're going to find in the process of removal is yourself. And what you're going to find in the process of removal is God. And where they intersect is the core of your very being. So what you find when you go after what God's will is for you, I think at the very essence of it, it is your will for you. They are identical. They don't seem identical because most of us are looking outside, not inside. We are trying to fill the hole and to fill the pain with objects and thrills. And it's like feeding a racehorse sugar. Works very briefly, very short range, does not work long range. We don't care long range. Just short range is perfect. I'm ADD, this is going to work. You just give me throw me a fish. I don't want to learn how to fish, just throw me a fish. But at some point in time, we started to get in touch with the same courage that got us to the front door of Alcoholics Anonymous, the combination of courage and pain and an honesty. And what the underpinning of that is what Bill talked about, both Bill Wilson and Bill Cleveland, is humility, which is the bedrock of the steps. And it is, I have had the worst year and a half I've had in 20 years, the last year, up until about 3 months ago. I've lost 3/4 of whatever I've accumulated in my lifetime, and I was in danger, I thought, of going bankrupt. I was in danger. I didn't think I was. I was. And I went into a depression, and the depression lasted about 15 months. And you say, what does a guy do with 40 years of sobriety who's in a depression, who's scared to death, think that they're losing their treasure? Again, you asshole. You lost it in 1990. You made it back, and you're losing it again. I mean, give me a break. How in hell? I mean, how? I mean, you know, how could you be here again? And so what do you do? You know, I mean, you feel doubly bad because you're supposed to be wise, and you have stuck it in the dirt. I do what you do. I go to 5 meetings a week. I went to Mass on Monday and Tuesday, and the other 5 days, you know, I go to 5 or 6 meetings a week. I keep sponsoring the men that I'm sponsoring, and I do the deal. I get on airplanes to go give talks, and sometimes I have to hold a shotgun on myself to go get on the plane. I don't feel like giving the talk. I don't feel like going. I don't feel I should be the guy giving the talk because I'm troubled and depressed. But the process helped me because I think I would have isolated had I stayed home. Now, I think there's a balance. I mean, you think you got to do some staying at home, you got to do some going, and you go, you know, everybody's got to find their point in that process. And about 3 months ago, I popped out of the depression. And it was like someone turned a light on. Now, I have been trudging. I've been trying to do the right thing, and it isn't like it's been all just this, you know, all darkness. There's been, you know, I've got a great life. I've got 3 wonderful children. I'm, you know, got a beautiful wife and a good relationship, but it's been tough. And I've been, you know, I'm crying at commercials, and I mean, you know, I'm not sleeping the way. I mean, it's just, you know, and all the fun sort of stuff that you do when you're not in a very good place. And I'm looking through my hole in the fence is right under the cow's tail. And it is. And I understand there are lots of holes in the fence. And from time to time someone will take me to another hole, but I have my chair set up and a piece of carpet, and I've got an umbrella, and I've got my iced tea. And once in a while the cow moves. I get a glimpse of, you know, of how it is. And I'm not kidding. I mean, it is. I mean, it's hopeless. I mean, it is just. I mean, it's good that we can laugh at ourselves because I mean, it is, and that's the nonsense that is in our way. I mean, it's immaterial. It's made up. It's. I mean, the ego, the thing that we talk about, we're going to get rid of. You're not going to get rid of it. It's a spacesuit. You can't take the journey without it. But it's got to become a junior partner. It's an illusion. You made it up. Einstein called it the optical illusion of consciousness. It is a collection of decisions that we've made about ourselves over an extended period of time. It is the false self. And little by little, as you start to do the work, I'm a meditator. I meditate most days. In meditation, you start to get some detachment from your thoughts. That is one of the greatest freedoms. I used to be a monkey on a string. Thought, reaction, thought, reaction, thought, reaction. You put a quarter in me and push B5, we're going to play B5. But now you put a quarter in me and you push B5, I get a choice. I never had that choice. I was just spring-loaded, 60 miles an hour, self-centered, narcissistic, unconscious, I don't know, head first, no helmet. I mean, it was just, and it's and today I get a thought like that and I can watch it. And it is like being let out of jail. And certain thoughts still have more Velcro. So when I thought I was losing all my money, that had more Velcro. I mean, that was not like changing my clothes. That was like carrying skin off my body. But this time, it didn't have my soul. In 1989, it had my soul. This time, it had my testicles. It did. It did. And I think the very most difficult, I know people that have gone through difficulty, I think the hardest thing to handle and the biggest problems in life, the most difficult ones to handle are the ones that never happen. Which is about 90% of what I reduced my day of. It is, I think the most painful part of my experience the last year and a half has been my self-centeredness. Bar none. If you would have made the mistake of asking me how I was, now I've got this story. Should I say fine? You've been sober a long time. Are you going to dump this load on the person who just walked up and asked you a social question? Or you're supposed to also tell it how it is. I mean, are you going to be a phony and say, okay, or you're going to say, so you make up this little, who cares? And even though I think I tell it well, who cares? I mean, over a period of time, people just get tired of the goddamn story. I mean, it is just, hoping that you move on, die. I mean, or, something. It is. I mean, do you think you're the only person this is happening to? Wake up. I mean, 2008 happened. I mean, do you know how many people are walking around with a 101k or kids in prison or losing their house and kids unemployed and raising grandchildren? I mean, wake up and smell the bloody coffee. The gratitude that you find when you start to extricate your head out of that crevasse is, and you start to avail yourself of the real joy. You start to take a look at your sponsor. You start to take a look at Alcoholics Anonymous. You start to take a look at the pain that is in the world and the fact that one of the greatest things that we have in Alcoholics Anonymous is we have been forced into a relationship with the God of our understanding. I was reading a new book called The New Christianity, and it talked about the old Christianity was very, very much focused on what you believed. And that if you wanted to be a good Christian or, in this church, you had to have the formula. We do a little of that in AA that's changing. And what people are interested in today, they're not interested as much in what you believe. They're interested in access to the transformational principles that will transform their lives. In Alcoholics Anonymous, we don't care what the hell you believe. We want your experience. So we're forcing ourselves to have an experience which is the deepest, most wonderful, most personal possible engagement that we could have. Not one of dogma, not one of belief, but an experience. And you start out collectively. What we have in Alcoholics Anonymous, and one of the reasons it's so nice to talk here this weekend, I will tell you, is it isn't just the quality of the talkers, there's pitching and catching. You need someone to catch what you're pitching. In some places, people can't catch the conversation we're having this weekend. One of the reasons we're able to have the conversation we're having this weekend is we've got pitchers and catchers. We have a collective consciousness that is strong in this room. Collective consciousness is a powerful thing. When we bring our damp log to the bonfire of AA, which is what we do on a daily basis, the newcomer checks his mind at the door and brings his damp log into the bonfire of AA, and little by little it gets dried out. There is a collective thinking, a collective spirit in that room, and he or she swims in that spirit without even realizing that it's having an impact on them. And little by little, they're able to take just a teeny bit of that out into the world, which is what we do in meditation, which is what we do in kind of all aspects of our program, is we get the experience of the grace, that feeling that 8 minutes or 40 seconds that Cliff talked about. And more we are able to maintain that, to elevate our spirit, to raise our consciousness. And when you raise your consciousness, you start to see it, and you have a choice. Maybe a choice for the first time in your life, to really have a choice. And all it does is we don't need it. We don't need it. It is not our treasure. It is not, but it is what's in our way. And that is a spiritual journey. If I said to Mildred, I want you to come home with me.
Thank you for listening to Sober Sunrise. If you enjoyed today's episode, please give it a thumbs up as it will help share the message. Until next time, have a great day.